Welcome to Between State Lines.
No silent dancing.
You know what? We'll do some. There we go. Some silent dancing. So, everybody, welcome back to Between State Lines, episode 3. You'll notice that our intro is a little bit creepier, a little bit spookier. We're going in a different direction for the podcast. I think you guys will like it. We like it. We're both spooky people, so I think it's the right move.
Feels right. Feels natural.
Feels natural. So, how was your week, Steph?
It was chaotic. My 3-year-old is feral, and I am learning to accept it. But it's hard.
I mean, what are you going to do?
Yeah. And then my 5-year-old starts school coming up. And so I got him signed up for a little intro days for next month. And it made me really sad. Growing up way too fast. Yeah. How about your week? What you got going on?
It's been going pretty crazy. I'm in Denver this week for work and traveling. I missed the craziness on Friday with that whole shutdown and everything going down, the planes being delayed and stuff. So thankfully I didn't hit that, but I'm in Denver and my dad, he always does this whenever I go to Denver, will text me about how there's a secret world underground thing underneath the airport, which I think he is just jokingly saying, but I can never get a good read on him because he's not a very big paranormal believer in the first place. But I did look into it. You could do your own episode of this podcast strictly on Denver Airport. That's how absurd it is.
Yeah, it's how big it is, and then all of that like artwork that they have around there. And I've only touched on hearing about it pretty recently, probably in like the last 3 weeks, and it sounds insane. Like I looked at like a chart of the level of conspiracy theories, and that one was like you're almost leaving reality, but it wasn't leaving reality yet.
Yeah, apparently they faced so many delays when they were building the airport, and people got this conspiracy where the delays were because they were firing different teams and reassigning people to build the underground world. But you mentioned the painting, and I actually looked in that specifically. I haven't actually seen the painting, but I've heard about it.
Like there's sculptures and paintings all throughout that are like supposed to be insane. So you're gonna have to also tell me about your painting that you did research on, because I haven't heard of anything specific. I've just heard that the whole thing is insane.
Well, the first thing to paint the structure or the statues, my boss picked me up from the airport, and she made sure to point out the horse's red eyes and how it's like a devil or something. I was like, all right, here we go. But that's one. And then the painting is the Children of the World Dream of Peace painting. There's 3 panels in the painting. The first panel represents the horrors of war with grieving parental figures, bombed out buildings, and children sleeping in just like a blown up area. And the dominant figure is a faceless soldier impaling a dove, or the representation of peace, on the point of their sword. Yeah.
And why did this get put in an airport? And this is just the first panel.
Just the first panel. It's the Illuminati.
My God. And at an airport, like you get checked before you come into the airport for absolutely anything resembling anything that could be used as a weapon, but they have this on the wall.
And side note, TSA, I'm not admitting to anything here, but one time when I flew out of Washington, D.C., I flew with a really sharp, like, metal pointed thing. Could have been used as a knife, and somehow ended up in my bag. Didn't get flagged by the TSA for anything in there. But coming back, my toothpaste got flagged.
Yeah, I've actually been stopped I went hiking in Hawaii, and they wanted to stop and test the dirt on my shoes. And then another time they tested my formula too. Like it was like an unused thing of formula. They made me open it and checked it. It's like, okay, no problem. Gotta feed the kid.
The second panel of the painting, it depicts impending disasters brought on by climate change. So dead animals are seen throughout the painting. On either side rather, the bodies of a woman and a child lay in coffins. This is a public painting, by the way. illustrating that humans are not immune from the impact of the changing ecosystem.
Wow. Yeah, this is the stuff of nightmares, and this is just out for anybody.
Just out in the world, you can't drag queens can't read to kids at story time, but you can have this painting in a public airport.
Wow. That is the stuff of nightmares. Like a child and a mother in a coffin. Like that was enough. I can't believe this is. Can you bypass it? Is it in the middle of like the an area you have to go past?
I think it's in a widely trafficked area, which makes me think that when I go out Wednesday, I fly back out. I'm gonna be on the lookout for this specific painting.
Although good luck because I hear that that airport is huge. And that's part of the
Yeah,
conspiracy. But also climate change, that's another conspiracy out there. I don't know who's
that-
questioning it, but it was on the conspiracy chart.
and then there's one last panel. So the central panel of this whole painting is actually a scene of hope and optimism for the future. In it, the people of all races and nationalities are seen embracing each other, smiling happily and singing. Weapons of war are bundled in nationalistic flags with children bearing them forward. And a broken statue of the soldier from the first panel is buried and forgotten. It's like kind of a culmination of like it's peaceful now that went through all this awful, and I guess that is like the one world government getting everything together, making it peaceful, like Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, don't be scared. There's hope in the end. At what cost? I don't know, but don't worry that their stuff has been forgotten somehow. Not to the rest of us who've seen this painting, apparently.
Wow, but all this got me thinking, what other things do people think are actually real? Which, of course, resulted in me searching down the wildest theories on reality. And I don't know if you're ready for this, but it's pretty crazy, and I think you're going to question your own existence.
Okay, let's go for it.
All right, so number one, and this one, okay, it's the wackiest theory, the weirdest theory I've read into. I don't believe it. It sounds crazy. Well, maybe parts are not crazy, but this main part is. It's called the Silurian, Silurian hypothesis. Silurian, I don't know how to pronounce that, which is basically the idea that a previous, more advanced human race or species was on the Earth more than 10 million years ago. It was developed by Adam Frank and Gavin Schmidt. And this is where a lot of people are going to be like, what the heck? It's based on an episode of Doctor Who. Silurians, I'm going to say the S word, the S civilization supposedly evolved on Earth during the eponymous era, which was about 443 to 416 million years ago. During this time, to avoid any kind of catastrophe, again, this is where you're going to lose me, the reptiles went into hibernation, so the reptilians, for millions of years before being awakened by secret nuclear experiments in a Welsh mine. Now,
Is
obviously,
this the theory of the lizard
reptilians,
people?
they are the lizard people. So like
Okay.
that is where you lose me for a second. However, it is very possible that another race, maybe humans of older folk, lived here before us. And there's two reasons why that could be. Number one, our society, humans, have only been around for a couple 100,000 years, so literally the tiniest sliver of existence. And two, there's not much Earth left from 2.5 million years ago. So anything older, like bones, structures, fossils, older than that, we really haven't found, probably won't find, it's gone, destroyed by nature. So it wouldn't be improbable that it's impossible to find that. Now, the theory wraps up by saying these humans or species left Earth a long time ago, went to other planets, which leaves open the door. If you go to Venus, Mars, actually explore the moon a little more, maybe we find evidence there.
My little sister used to tell me that we had to close all the windows in the house because of the lizard people. And I didn't know that this was like a real theory for until pretty recently. It was on the conspiracy theory chart. That one was leaving reality. I don't like the sound of that, but it mostly because aliens freak me out and it sounds very alien. right?
Very alien.
Yeah.
The origin of aliens.
Yeah. Like if that's another human species, that feels very alien. And I don't know if I like that.
Which last week we had talked about aliens, and I had mentioned like how maybe we're not the most, maybe either we're the most evolved or the least evolved species. So maybe these reptilians, if it's reptilians, they are the most evolved species, and they are aliens.
Yeah. I would say there's no way that we could be the most evolved, right?
Well, we developed
Just
this
looking at
theory,
the
so I
evidence.
mean it's pretty.
Yeah, looking at the evidence, I just don't feel like we could be the most evolved, especially just thinking of how big everything is. Like, there's no way. There's no way it's just us, the only ones that are like out there experimenting, doing research, and that we have the full say in what's going on in our world. It doesn't feel like it. Somebody else is like calling all the shots.
Well, it's kind of like I saw this TikTok a year ago where it kind of like compared the sizes of like things, how they are proportionally. And it started with like a human being, or no, it was like an ant, a dog, a human, and then got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually like zoomed out to like the galaxy or the far away galaxy, and like compared to our galaxy, and like the fact that we are just a tiny dot, like there's just no way that nothing exists out there.
Yeah, it doesn't feel possible. But then like then you kind of get into the simulation theory of like, is this real even? Like, I don't know, I was talking to my uncle about it earlier and just talking about like, well, what if this was like the Matrix? what what if none of this is real? And he's like, if I've lived here my whole life, I think I'm okay with that. Like, just let me keep doing my thing. And then of course I dove off and like, okay, well then birds real? Because I've heard that theory too, and they kind of don't look like they are.
Yeah, crows do not look like real things.
Well,
Pigeons are
seagulls.
just too dumb. Seagulls, oh
Oh
my
my,
god, yeah.
yeah, you're so right about pigeons too. Like, yeah, I don't know. I saw a doofy looking turtle the other day.
Although, so and going back to space for a second, and I don't remember the name of it, but there is a broadcast that we received from deep space. I don't know how long ago, maybe like 10, 20 years ago. And we have not been able to identify where it came from, what it is, or anything about it. We just have this recording of deep space, and we have no idea what we're listening to.
So then that goes into the multiverse. Like, I think they were calling like daughter verses, and it just like splits out, and they're all next to each other. And one person said like they all have to exist to be able for any one of them to exist. I don't know how far into that I could go without my brain exploding, but it sounded really interesting, but it did make my brain hurt a little bit watching like the family trees of multiverses.
Which reminds me of like the Avengers. I don't know if you're a big Marvel fan at all. I'm a huge Marvel fan.
Haven't seen anything fully through, but the Avengers are on as background noise today at my house.
There you go. They go into the multiverse, and like that is pretty crazy. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but the multiverse, as I've heard it, like broken down in simple terms for somebody with a small brain like mine, if you get a
Same.
bath and you fill it with bubbles, basically the bubbles within the bubbles are multiverse, like the bathtub containing all those bubbles. Each one has its own universe.
Yeah, it talked about like some theories are like the multiverses, every decision you make splits off and that makes another universe. And then also, and it did talk about Marvel, like, well, if they could be really onto something based on all of these theories, because like it could be the decisions that you make and somebody else is living out that other life but making the opposite decision and feeling that they've made all of these good choices that you feel that you've made in your universe. And then, oh man, I'm like, it just, even thinking about this makes my brain split in so many different ways. Because then it talked about the particle accelerator and how that could have been like a butterfly effect that made it so that we're not on our original timeline, and so many things. And I did not even do extensive research this week like I should have. It just kept splitting off.
Well, basically, like, yeah, I mean, like, while you're here recording this podcast with me, in another galaxy, either we have swapped genders and I'm a female, you're a male, or we're both females, or both males, or we're not doing this podcast. You're doing it with somebody else, I'm doing it with somebody else, or we're not doing it at all. Like, just the fact, like, the decision to do this podcast and not just do this podcast, do this episode. Like, the podcast branches out into yes, no, all these different scenarios. And then this episode, you could have done a number of different other episodes instead of this one. And so that branched out into a whole different family of universe decisions. And it's like we created our own little multiverse just by existing on this podcast.
Yeah, and making the decision to like go this route versus what we were feeling out in the first episode. Like, we've created several different multiverses.
Now, you mentioned timeline jumping, which is essentially a sub-theory of multiverse. I pulled this information directly from medium.com, which is medium.com. So take with it what you will, believe it or not believe it. But according to them, you can actually practice the ability to timeline jump. And in this practice, I'm going to quote them directly. Write it down so you can do it. In this practice, you use visualizations to access the next or future ideal version of yourself and your life. Isn't something only achievable to a select few, but a powerful meditation technique that calls on the potential that exists within all of us. The potential to envision and therefore experience what we give our energy and our time to. If you are stuck feeling like nothing will ever change, that you will never experience what you desire, and your deepest happiness is not possible, consider the alternative. What if you could have everything and be your truly desirable self in a world that already exists?
Okay, so I did that last night for the full moon. I wrote down on 2 pieces of I wrote down on 2 different pieces of paper. I wrote what I want to let go of in my life and what my intentions are and how I want my life to look and how I want it to feel. And I burnt the one of the stuff that I wanted to let go. And I did this last night.
Do you feel any different?
I mean, I felt different, but I did all of the rituals. So I don't know. I did an egg cleanse. Wash my hands with salt and cinnamon. I don't know what might work with any of this stuff, but I know that I do feel different afterwards and it feels fine. If it's placebo effect, I'm here for it.
Okay, I'm going to ask everybody who wants to know, what is an egg cleanse?
Oh, so you take an egg and you get like you're removing negative energies from you. It's basically to see if you have like the evil eye. So like if somebody has negative intentions coming towards you, like jealousy, anything like that. I have a lot of evil eye stuff, like my mouse pad's an evil eye. I have a bracelet that I wear 24/7 that's an evil eye. I have a ring over here too that I normally wear too. But yeah, so you rub it from head to toe and then you crack it into a glass of water. And in that, you don't want to be looking above it because you can absorb all the negative energy back. But so you're like looking at it head on, and if there are like little points coming out from your egg, then that's supposed to be like the negative energy. And if it has a bubble at the top, that's the evil eye. That you can see like discoloration in the egg. That's supposed to be like health problems. If there's cloudiness, that's like the negative energy that like, yes, good, you did the egg cleanse. You're like clearing out that negative energy. I had a skull in mine and I've never seen that before. It was really small, but I did this with my best friend and I was like, okay, this is scary. I'm going to go home and do more research. But so then after you do the egg cleanse, you put cayenne pepper, garlic powder, spicy stuff. And it's basically you're like returning to sender because the skull is supposed to be that your name came up in some sort of like not good ritual. And So yeah, so I did a return to sender, and then you seal it with salt, and then you flush it, but you have to not look at it because you can't absorb that energy back. So like creeping by the toilet and like dumping it and flushing it without looking in it. And hopefully we did it correctly, but I feel like my best friend's way more versed at this than I am. I've done it with her before, but I like have to rewatch the videos, look into it to make sure I'm not like absorbing any of that negative stuff back. And then we wash our hands with salt and cinnamon, like salt for cleansing purposes and cinnamon because it's supposed to be good for good fortune.
Okay, that was much different than what I thought it was gonna be. I thought you were gonna crack an egg and like rub it on your hands, like that was your cleanse. But that
Oh,
actually
yeah,
sounds a
no, it's
lot better.
way more. Yeah, way more extensive than that. And yeah, I feel different afterwards, almost like kind of just lighter. And I don't know if it really is absorbing negative energies or what's going on there. If your yolk breaks, then you're supposed to redo the egg cleanse. But like there's tons of videos out there if anybody's interested in it. Like somebody way more versed than I am about it. But yes, I practice the egg cleansing. When I first pictured it, I thought it was going to be like eating a raw egg. I was like, no, I don't know about this. No
So
thanks.
so if you did that, are you familiar with tarot or do you do tarot card readings or have you done tarot card readings?
No, I've been given the tarot cards once, and I'm scared of that kind of stuff. Like I'm interested, but also weary. So the if you're given something like that, that's the only way you're supposed to be able to receive them. You're not supposed to buy them, supposedly. And then so I gave them to somebody who was really interested in them. It's like I don't need that in my life. And plus I don't know what's going on there and I just don't want to invite anything that I'm not prepared for. But if somebody wants to do readings on me, love it. I'm here for it. Just don't ask me for donations because that's what it always comes down to, right?
Yeah, tarot card readings always remind me of, or it's not the same thing, but it kind of reminds me of the Ouija board. I've
Yeah.
always wanted to do a Ouija board, but like I feel like they're the same thing, kind of like contacting the spirit world.
Yeah, I don't want to open up that can of worms. Like me and my best friend were talking about this when we were shopping at Home Goods the other day. Like this blanket had the little sign said like a Ouija board, but then you could clearly tell it didn't have it on the blanket. So it was like, okay, this is cool. I would keep this. I don't want anything that kind of resembles that just in case. And her daughter was like, I would absolutely do a Ouija board. I've only heard terrifying stories about them. I also had a friend in like the fifth grade that was like, oh, it just goes off of like the magnetic energy in your fingers or whatever. And that was comforting. Like, I found that very comforting, but still not going to try it. Don't even really want to be
No.
in an area where somebody else does it. I will watch like a video maybe.
Yeah, you don't want to bring Clayton into the scenario from my
Oh,
mom's house.
exactly. I've been blaming everything on Clayton too. So if I do invite anything, it's 100% because I've been terrorizing Clayton.
That rapscallion Clayton. I swear, I don't believe that story she told me, but like now, like I'm all alone in the hotel room. I'm like, oh, maybe there is a Clayton. He's actually gonna be popping up, watching me sleep in the corner.
I'm scary being in a place that you're not familiar with too. Like, did you bring you sage with you?
I didn't. I felt they were gonna snag it at TSA and like call it marijuana. Like, ah, this is weed.
Mhm.
You're going to
That's
jail.
fair. I don't think they're that into it there because, like, what? It's legal in Colorado.
It is. So, multiverse. Another. Okay, so this is tying back to Marvel for a second, but there is a movie in the Marvel universe called Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I'm not going to spoil it for anybody, but the main character, the Scarlet Witch, has to make a decision on whether she should jump timelines, steal the life of her other self, the one who has her kids, happy life, husband, just everything she wanted. And which begs to ask, would you want to do that? You'd be abandoning the current life you have in favor of another. And I went down a rabbit hole for this in Reddit. And the people on this Reddit thread who said they would did so because they lost someone in their life, someone died, and they were grieving and wanted to see them again. However, that begs to ask, how similar are those people that you lost in this life in that other life? Are they the same person? Do they act the same way? Are they as loving? Are they as caring? Is your relationship the same way as it is in your timeline? And
If you go and take yourself out, you're doing essentially the same thing that you felt in this universe to them. Even if everything lines up that they're the same person, you're the same person, like you're now the evil villain in your own story.
yep, and does that lessen the human experience? Like, I think it does, and, like, grieving a loss is, like, the worst. It's so awful, it's brutal, but also it makes you strong. There's so much you can learn from it, and if you just avoid grieving altogether by replacing that person you lost, like, you're never gonna learn that lesson, and if you're constantly jumping timelines, get the life you want, does that lessen the value of life itself? You didn't achieve those things, like, that person's life, they achieved all those things in that world, and you're just stealing it.
Yeah. And then how do you tell that person, like, I loved you so much, I lost you in my timeline that I came here and I murdered the person that you loved so much that's me. And now, yeah, I think that lessens all of it. And then really, like, did you really love that person to begin with?
Now, however, this does bleed into a different side theory from timeline jumping called quantum immortality theory, which is pretty much what it sounds like. You never die. So when you die in one universe, you just hop into a different universe, not by choice, but just by nature. Now, does that mean that you replace the version of yourself or that you exist at the same time? You're together as one? And could that be an explanation for deja vu or feeling like you have lived a past life?
Or do you start over and like you're a new soul in this other universe? And that's why little kids sometimes have past lives. Essentially, then are we all vampires? Like, if we are living forever, which I also went down that rabbit hole because there's vampires in Louisiana, if you haven't come across that
I haven't.
area.
Do tell.
Oh, they're just talking about this guy who I guess has essentially existed forever. Like they know at least that he's been around for hundreds of years in Europe, and then he was there for like all these big events, and then it's like different versions of what looks like the same guy. And then now he's living down in Louisiana, and it's like if you see this guy, like he bought this huge prestigious property there, and that essentially like they thought that he disappeared for a while, and then they're like it's still him. And people are talking about like the different encounters that they come with if you live in the area, that yeah, there's all of the things that you've heard all of the stories about, like werewolves, vampires. It's all sectioned off into different sections, and like watch your back when you're in Louisiana. And I've been down there one time to Bourbon Street, and we got pickpocketed. I was like 12, but um that was a wild energy down there. I could I could see how it'd be something very strange going on, but I can't imagine being amongst all of that like chaotic energy and being like, does this exist? Does it not exist?
Now, I gotta ask you a question. If you had a chance to become a vampire, would you do it? Like you never die. In this scenario, I'm gonna be nice and say you don't have to kill anybody. You get bitten and you live forever. You don't have to feed on anyone else. You can eat regular stuff.
Oh, that's another thing is that this guy, like the police went down to his house and there it was like completely empty, didn't have any like uh it didn't look like anyone lived there. There was no like plates or anything, but they had glasses of wine mixed with blood. And I don't know. I think that it's interesting to be able to live forever, but also sounds like a really big burden. Like having one life is already so hard, and apparently every decision you make might split off into other multiverses. That sounds like a very big burden to carry, even if you're not like I've seen True Blood. Like if they came out with some True Blood synthetic thing that you could still live off of it and live in that world, it still sounds like you have a lot of crazy choices to make. How about
I don't know. I feel like, yeah, living one life is exhausting as it is. And I don't know if I'd want to live a million years. Like everyone you know dies, and you got to meet new people, make new friends, and like making new friends is already exhausting as it is. Do it for the next
Yeah.
100,000 years.
Yeah, and then it feels like your friends and family making that same decision, like how can you convey the big burden that it is to be around forever? That also essentially feels like you're making the decision for them on if you're okay with them carrying that too, or no, you just have to watch them die. I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it either. But going back to quantum immortality for a second. So
Oh yes.
I've actually thought that like maybe I have in some points in my life escaped death by jumping timelines. Because one time I was driving on a highway and a 2x4 fell off a truck in front of me, smashed my windshield, and the way it smashed it, it like the frame of the car where the windshield is, it barely missed going right through the windshield. Hit the frame instead by like inches. So like did I die in that scenario? And like was I impaled by a 2x4 and then now I'm here?
That is so interesting that you say that. I've had a lot of near death experiences when it comes to cars. And like I hit a deer on I-5. And I've never seen a deer on I-5, but somehow it went under my car instead of over it. And if it would have gone over, I would have been toast. But because it went under, I was okay. Also, I've been hit by like this big farming truck. Luckily, I was in a Volvo. Uh, but when they took me out of the car, I had broke my collarbone because my seatbelt did its job. But there was not enough space for a person to be because the dash was pushed back so far to the seat. Like they didn't know how I fit there. Did I die? I
That's
can't believe that you could have been hit by a 2x4. Like that is some Final Destination.
yeah, I don't mess around with those cars anymore. But like and you've hitchhiked, like maybe in some of your hitchhiking experiences you actually were killed and now you jump timelines. You don't remember that because you didn't experience it because you're in this timeline.
Easily. I know that there's been several times in my life that it's been like that was kind of a blackout moment of what exactly happened there. Like specifically that car accident. I don't remember the car accident at all. And yeah, I remember just being like, you know what? I survived and I think that I just have to accept.
Which goes into our next theory, simulation, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's this entire existence is nothing but a simulation on an AI's computer. So either an AI is running the show or it's somebody playing a complex version of the Sims. Now, there are three possibilities according to this theory. Either all civilizations go extinct before becoming technologically capable of creating civilization simulations, or they lose interest in doing so, or they are run by a simulation. And there are some things that could prove simulation theory is real. Have you ever heard of the Mandela effect?
Yes, I have a very specific one that I have a problem with. That genie movie one, that there was like Kazam and like Shazam.
Yes, that's on my list.
This one,
Shazam.
yeah, it drives me absolutely bonkers because I remember being a child and that genie movie came out. And then it felt like maybe a week later seeing an ad for the second one coming out and me being like, why did we need another genie movie? Then to find out that that was not real. And like, I remember watching both of them. Like it was on all the time. We were babysat by TVs when I was a kid. And I definitely remember watching both of them and thinking, why?
Yeah, no, I remember that too. And I remember reading about this and I was like, no, that's BS. Like we either imagine it or it is simulation.
Yeah, either that or we jump timelines. Because even the actor from the movie has said, I did not do this movie. And I'm like, I call bull. You did it. I saw it. Yeah. And even me and my best friend were talking about the Mandela himself. Like, we remember him dying in prison. Like, that was the story. And then all of a sudden, we saw he died later in our lifetime. It was like, I thought he died before I was born.
Yeah. Somehow he was still alive.
Even some of the branding stuff that they have that's like down the wormhole of the Mandela effect. Like, I understand how I could get some branding things wrong, but there's some on there that I'm like, I don't recognize that. And you're telling me that that is like real life. I recognize the one you're telling me is not real, but I do not recognize. It feels like I'm being force fed something.
So do you remember the movie, I mean, I'm sure you do, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs?
Yeah, my great grandma's older sister was a writer for that.
Really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Dorothy and Blank, and it's on the IMDb in this timeline.
I mean, that's pretty awesome. What are the odds?
I like fun facts, but keep going.
So do you remember the line that was it the witch said? I don't the old lady, the enemy, yeah, the witch. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? That was
Mhm.
what she said.
Yeah,
No, she didn't say that. She
I know.
said magic mirror on the wall. That is bullcrap. I remember it being mirror, mirror on the wall.
Yeah, I remember it being mirror, mirror on the wall in the movie, and then having like a toy that said magic mirror, and being like, why did they change it? So yeah, no. But I also, somewhere in this household, I need to find it, or I did at one point. They had a Good Housekeeping magazine from 1937 that they did the intro to show that Snow White was coming out, because they didn't have trailers then. So it was in Good Housekeeping, and it's like a couple of page fold about it. And my great grandma's older sister did this, and so I bought it for my grandma before she passed. Like, and I live in the house that she was in, so I need to find it somewhere around here. But I want proof. I want proof that I'm wrong about this. And if so, I firmly believe I have jumped timelines. There's no way. I mean, I can go off the simulation thing too, because like I said, like, if this is all a simulation, then I guess I should just be happy that I'm not like living in whatever filthy pool that I'm in right now.
No one puts you in a pool and put a fence around you and let you just drown and become a
Yeah.
ghost, and then as a ghost make a million babies with the Undertaker or whatever, which is totally not what I did when I played Sims. I didn't do that at all. I was always so nice to all my Sims.
My little sister was so evil to all of her Sims. I definitely remember her locking them into rooms. And I didn't play Sims. I played like Pharaoh back in the day, where you can like have your little towns in Egypt, and hippos would come crush your people and whatnot. Or the gods would come and smite you. But yeah, I didn't have the full control of the Sims. Sounds like so much fun though. But my little sister scared me. Where do you come up with this stuff?
It's the best way to play, okay?
Man, yeah, she definitely, she just locked people in rooms and took out the doors, and I did not understand where this was coming from. Like, why did your mind go here? But she's also the same kid that told me about the lizard people, so I don't know. She could be onto something.
Maybe she is a lizard person. That's what it is.
It would not surprise me. My little sister, like, she's so sweet, but something's going on in there.
So, are you a fan of Star Wars?
I have seen Star Wars. I know a little bit about it. I wouldn't say that I'm the biggest fan. I don't hate it though.
Yeah.
You'll have
Okay,
to
well, that's
explain things to me.
good. We can be friends if you don't hate it. So in episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader, as I recall it when I was a kid, told Luke Skywalker, Luke, I am your father. However, that's not the line. The line is, no, I am your father, which again is total and utter BS.
No, that was literally like all the parodies went and said the exact same line. Like, we have been imitating that line forever. We didn't just, no, I'm your father. No, no, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I'm calling
Now the
BS.
last I'm calling BS too. The last example I have of deja vu, the Mandela effect, is Pikachu. Obviously, everyone knows Pikachu is a yellow Pokemon. I
Yeah.
recall Pikachu having a black-tipped tail. Like,
Yeah.
it does not have a black-tipped tail. It's a full yellow, solid yellow, no black on the tail at all. Just
No.
completely yellow. Yeah,
No.
no,
That's wrong.
it is incorrect. It is bull crap.
It's wrong. I'm like, where do I have Pikachu? I have Pikachu somewhere.
And I
That's
have a
wrong.
Pikachu toy at home. When I get home, I'm gonna look at the toy because I am like 100% certain it had a black tip on the tail.
Yeah, black like it's like a lightning bolt, but with the black tip on the tail, and then it matches like the black tips on the ears. No, this is wrong. It's wrong. I'm like, where are all the Pokemon things? I feel like I normally have like at least some stickers or something. This is wrong.
Yeah, it's I am infuriated. I'm gonna be looking up when I get home. My cards, my toys, my actual Pokemon cartridge game. I'm gonna find all of that and see.
Yeah. I have my Game Boy Color, but my sister has it. I gave all of my Pokemon cards, and I have like old drawings even where I like traced Pokemon probably off the TV and put them in a binder. And my one of my best friend's kids has these. I need pictures. I need photo evidence of all of this because there's no way I can see Pikachu so clearly in my mind. There's no way. No
It's
way.
absolute BS. It's bullcrap. And so yeah, simulation theory. Now, the one of the strongest pieces of evidence for simulation theory, which obviously Mandela effect helps explain some of the things going on in the world, is that our universe it relies on mathematical laws and principles, like seemingly computational processes, all fit the same mold. Like they all run the same way. They have to obey the same laws.
I mean, it makes sense. There was a theory on there being this large landmass under the ocean, and it's supposed to be a giant continent. And they were saying like it's either like a continent or a big submarine, and that it's like putting out these frequencies that are changing the way that the water moves. And that's why you can see it is because in nature there's not a lot of like perfect circles, and so seeing like the way that these frequencies are going off and why the waves are changing, I don't know. I got a little bit deep in it, but I also wasn't sure how true any of it is, especially when you're getting your information off TikTok. But it was interesting. It was interesting. It was just saying like most of our stuff like goes off of binary code, and that when you are out observing things that occur in nature, then what exactly is that? Is that humans doing something and covering, or what's going on there? And I think that yeah, that can go into the simulation theory, because otherwise it just feels like so many of these things can cross into the multiverse, jumping timelines. Like it's hard to differentiate which one it could be, because it really could be either or.
Yeah, there. It's just so many different theories in the world, and there's just like we're scratching the surface on all this stuff. Like, there's a theory that like either you or I or one person is the only one that exists in the world because I can't prove that you have consciousness. Like I can talk to you, I can communicate with you, but I can't prove that you have actual thoughts and you have a life of your own. I just see your TikTok, I see you on this camera, I hear you. I can't prove you exist once you leave my sight, my view.
Yeah, that goes into like, are you on the Truman Show? Would you tell me if I was? Because I have asked people that actually pretty pretty recently in the last like 2 months. Like, hey, if I was on the Truman Show, would you tell me? And can I believe you if you say that you would?
I
Super
would tell you.
interesting. I mean, I'd hope so. I feel like I know that about you already. But I don't know, maybe I'm gullible.
Or maybe this is part of the Truman Show. It's called the Steff Show, and like our podcast is not actually going anywhere. It's just going to the simulated world within your life that is a TV show.
It's so interesting, but at the same time, I'm so sorry for anybody that actually would watch that because it sounds boring most of the time. Like, oh God, she takes a lot of random naps.
I'm not that interesting.
There's not that much going on, but at the same time, like when things happen that you're like, oh, I feel in alignment with where I'm supposed to be, like there's no other way that this could have happened. In those moments, I'm like, okay, where are the cameras? Who's watching? Because this feels like somebody wrote this up like reality TV is not really reality. That's what it feels like. Like, okay, I can kind of predict what's coming up next in the plot.
Well, I think we should end our podcast episode on the theories of existence there. However, I think we should make this a fun little ending we do from now on, where we read, and I have something prepared, read a creepy story that we have read that week, and just end it with that. That way, it sends you off with like sweet dreams, and you're really terrified.
Perfect. Also, but I
So,
do have to tell you really fast. I think I had my first experience of sleep paralysis
whoa,
after our
okay,
last episode.
do tell, do tell.
Okay, it's short and sweet, but I was in my room with my kids and they were sleeping, and so then I was like, ugh, they took over my entire bed, and so I went into my daughter's room, and I was up from like 1 in the morning to like 3 in the morning, and I was finally falling asleep on my phone, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna turn this off, and I just laid down and like closed my eyes for a second, and I was getting my eyes were so heavy, and I heard mom. And I was like, my son's up and he's going to be scared because he's not going to realize that I'm in their room. And I was like trying really hard to fight myself to get up. And I was having a hard time, but I did manage to like awaken myself and get myself out of bed, only to come into my room. My son's passed out. Both of them are just fully asleep. And I'm like, okay, I hope that was my body scaring me because I heard mom clear as day. And I had to fight to get up. But yeah, I think I had my first sleep paralysis. I don't know. I didn't want to dig into it any deeper. I went straight to my room, went back to bed, and went there surrounded by my kids. Like,
Now,
we're
did you
safe here.
sleep on your back? Did you sleep on your back or were you sleeping on your side?
You know what? I was on my stomach.
Oh, that's actually really, you've experienced sleep paralysis in the most rare. That's incredible. You convinced your brain to give you sleep paralysis. That's crazy.
I, either that or there was a
Subconsciously,
ghost in this house or something mimicking my child. But yeah, I don't know. Or it's Colton.
you know, and then you mentioned that real quick. I think I said last week I never had sleep paralysis, and maybe this is not sleep paralysis, but like when I was probably 10 years old, my parents like fought all the time as kids. But when I was 10 years old, I distinctly remember waking up at like midnight and like hearing my parents screaming at each other, like yelling and screaming and all this nonsense. And lights were on in the hallway, and I was like on another fight, back to sleep. Next day, I woke up. No one had fought. Like no one else heard it. Like it was just me that had woken up. My dad wasn't even there. Like he wasn't even in town.
Sleep paralysis, skipping timelines. Are we in the simulation? Kind of falls into everything. Especially your
Yes.
dad wasn't even in town.
Yeah. So like, what was I hearing? Like who was that? Like there was a male and a female clearly yelling at each other, and it was like my dad's voice, and the lights were on, and you could tell. Like I knew what their fight sounded like. Like it was like, oh, another one of those things.
That's another one that we're going to have to look into is, are you in a different reality when you're dreaming? Because that was one of the theories that I did read briefly on. Were you in a different reality?
Or instead of imagine like instead of like your death jumping timelines, what if like a traumatic event, your brain's like your body's way of dealing with a traumatic event is just jump timelines into a different timeline where nothing happened and it's peaceful.
There's so many ways that this could go, and everything feels so intermingled and plausible. I don't know for sure, but it sounds possible. And I think that if it has even the tiniest bit of weight that it could be possible, then we should at least entertain it.
Okay, so
All right.
final story before we part for the night. This will help you sleep. This is from Ask Reddit, and it's posted 8 years ago by the username Seamus. I posted this many, many years ago, posting again as it was genuinely terrifying and absolutely true. Many years ago, I lived in a big, old 3-story house that had a room on the middle level that we converted into an office. I used to write financial reports late at night that we published the next morning. The office had a few computers, and my toddler son had been playing on one of them before he went to bed. By the time he had fallen asleep, I switched off his monitor, scooped him up, and took him back to bed, flicking off the light as I left. For the next few hours, I relaxed in another room, watching TV with my wife. She went to bed around 11 p.m., and at midnight, I decided to do the same. But I realized I left a window open in the office, so I went in there to close it. The house was silent, and the room was pitch black, and colder than it should have been for that time of the year, even with the window open. I paused for a moment in the center of the room to think about this, and then it happened. Something was tapping on the glass. But it wasn't the random tappings of a bird or another kind of animal. It was completely uniform. It sounded human, but I was on the second floor. So how was that possible? It was so dark that I couldn't make out anything against the black glass, but a few minutes later it happened. Knock, knock, knock. By now I was already feeling on edge. Then something happened that chilled me to the core. Because out of the corner of the room, to my right, from the darkness, a high-pitched, almost squeaky voice began to speak quite loudly. I can see you. I froze in the spot. My blood went cold. My bowels prepared for evacuation. My God, I thought. I never wrote that book, any book. It spoke again, but with greater emphasis on that all-important word. I can see you. I determined that I was almost certainly fucked, so I figured, what the hell? I turned slowly to my right and walked into the darkness until I finally reached my son's computer. Nothing there but an empty chair. But no talking, just silence, a horrible silence. Carefully, I reached over and switched on the monitor. The screen brightened up, and there it was, something red and horrible. Once again, it tapped on the glass. It was fucking Elmo from Sesame Street.
Oh my God. I had goosebumps like on my cheeks.
I want to say that this story reminded me of something that happened to me about 2 weeks ago. So my daughter has, I'm sure you could have had this before, it's like a square table that if you push buttons, it makes noises and like they can stand, like walk around it. I guess it's kind of like a balance table, whatever it's called. But she has had one of those downstairs in the living room, and all around it, she had like those puzzles where if you pull a puzzle piece, it makes a noise like a fire truck, a police siren. And at 3 in the morning, woke up and I listened and I heard some noise in the downstairs, and I was like, "What the fuck is that noise?" And I sat up, like focusing in on the noise, and I was like, "Okay, it sounds like someone is playing with my daughter's toys." So I stood up, walked in the hallway. I could see directly down the stairs. No one was down there at all. So I walked downstairs. Keep in mind, all my cats were upstairs, so it wasn't them either. Walked downstairs and kept going, the table. And so I stood over and was watching it like just light up around the table. And as I'm watching it, I shit you not, the 3 puzzles around the table went off. Fire engine, police siren, and like some kind of, I think it was like a cow going moo. All went off. Like boom, 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 boom. I turned off the table and I was like, fuck this. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, I can't believe you turned off the table. I'd be like, nope, doesn't really bother me. I'm wearing headphones tonight. I'm going to bed. Hopefully it doesn't wake anybody else up.
And my wife didn't believe me. She was like, no, it was you. And I was like, no, it was not me. Like I could hear it all the way upstairs.
No, kids' toys are so scary. That is the most organized I've ever had, like in my entire life, was when we had baby toys. Because everything had to be turned off, put away. No, I'm not messing around with that, especially because like baby monitors, terrifying. Like, have you ever seen the picture of the person looking at the baby monitor and they see like a baby's face and it's because underneath the sheet had like a baby ad thing on it and so it looked like another baby's face on it? Terrifying. I was so scared that I was going to get bamboozled like that because kids are already terrifying as it is. Especially if they start coming out with like talking about their imaginary friend or nah, I cannot believe you were that brave to go down there. And I'm interested in every sound.
Well,
Couldn't be me.
the last owner's husband died in the front on the driveway. I didn't know this till after he bought the house. Like a neighbor down the road, his family grew up in that same neighborhood, and apparently a year before he bought, the guy had fallen off his RV and like smacked his head and died. And I was like, well,
Wait,
I wish I had known that.
yeah, I feel like they should tell you that. And also, does he know that he died? It's not Colton, it's that guy. What's his name? And I'm sorry,
His
it
name
was
is
Colton,
Tom,
right?
Clayton. Now he's gonna come after
Like,
you. Now you brought
I
Clayton on us. Steph, what is
I
it?
know.
You
I'm
angered
sorry.
Clayton by calling him Colton.
I have been just driving him crazy, blaming everything on him, calling him wrong names all week. Like it's like gonna be like that whole thing on Parks and Rec where it's like, what's his name? Jerry, Carrie, I don't know.
You're never gonna get rid of
Sorry,
Clayton. He's
Clayton.
he's there to stay.
Yeah, well, you got Tom over there, so or whoever in
Clayton,
Denver. Like you just never know about mystery demon in Denver. I'm sorry.
the Holiday Inn
I'm sorry.
Express guy followed me out here.
You're staying at a Holiday Inn Express? Didn't we talk about
No,
this?
I'm staying at a Hilton, thankfully.
Oh, thank God.
Maybe, maybe
I was like,
what?
oh my
Hey,
God,
maybe he switched careers.
I'm having major deja vu. Didn't we talk about this last week? Oh,
We
thank
did.
God it's the Hilton.
Well, Steph, this is fun. I think next week we know what our topic's gonna be. It's gonna be ghosts and just everything ghosts next week.
I mean, you can try. I feel like it's all intermingled. We're coming back to the simulation theory, multiverse, and we've tiptoed into it. It's coming up again. Because who really
And for
knows? Are
anyone
these ghosts or is that just like footsteps from another universe?
interested, if you hop over to timeline 63543, they are doing a show on ghosts this week, so you can go listen to that show and come back to us. Let us know how it was.